Do you remember Ethan Couch? He was the teenager who got drunk, went behind the wheel with a car full of his friends, and unfortunately crashed into people that were on the side of the road, killing 4 of them. Now, he was in national headlines after the defense attorney hired an expert to basically claim that Ethan Couch was a victim of affluenza. Since he grew up in a wealthy family, he didn't understand the consequences for his actions. Well, now it turns out that the Couch family is in the news again. Fred Couch, who is the father of Ethan, made a false claim that he was a police officer while police were investigating a disturbance at a home at around 1:17 a.m. Now, this is in Texas, and apparently when the authorities had arrived, Fred Couch was already there, and he identified himself as a police officer. Of course, he is not a police officer. He is the owner of a sheet metal manufacturer. And he told North Richland Police that he actually was a reserve officer for Lakeside Police. And so he's like, oh, I have my police stuff in the car. And they're like, okay. And so later on, he goes and he takes out a wallet that appears to have a police badge, but it looked really fishy to one of the police officials. So they let him go, but later on, they did more investigations and they found out, no, he's lying. He was arrested and charged with false identification as a police officer and also misrepresentation of property. His bond was set as $2,500, which is not a big deal for a millionaire like him.
All right, so there's 2 angles to the story that are interesting. One, what is this weirdo doing on a crime scene at 1 in the morning?
Yeah.
Pretending to be a cop. What's wrong with this family? And is he, I guess a corollary to that question is, when he goes to court, is he also going to try to use affluenza? Like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize the consequence of my actions either, because I'm also rich. But like, originally it was used to say, well, the kids growing up in that environment can't understand the consequences. Is this a blanket thing that we could now use? And you could do any kind of weird crime and just say, if you're rich, you're an idiot, obviously, and don't understand the consequences of your actions. I mean, isn't it amazing that they've now equated being rich with being like mentally challenged, like you can't tell good or bad. But in this case, it's a complicated crime. You have to actually go to a crime scene, make up a lot of stuff.
Yep.
So
I looked into his past, and I have information that I know, and then there are some things, some elements of this story that we do not know at this point. So we don't know what the disturbance was in that home. We don't know why he was there. The only thing we do know is that he falsely identified himself as a police officer. Now, if you look into his past and his wife's past, they've actually had a number of run-ins with the law, serious run-ins with the law, but they've never served any time behind bars because usually they'll just pay restitution and they'll get out of it. Okay, so I'll give you a few examples. His ex-wife now, she goes by Tanya. She actually tried to run someone off the road.
Oh my God.
And she was prosecuted for that, and she ended up paying some small fine, and she got out of it. She never served any jail time for that.
But that makes the case of their son running people over by the side of the road supremely ironic, because his mom, being rich, got away with running people off the road. And then he says, well, I learned that that's no big deal for rich people, so I ran into people on the road and I killed them, and so I should get off. And they say, yes, you should get off. Yes. Oh, it's maddening. It's maddening all over again.
Now, Fred Couch had run-ins with the law as well. There were 2 separate times where he wrote bad checks for a very small amount of money, but this was like in the 80s, so I don't know whether or not he was a millionaire at that point. And then also he was in trouble for assaulting his ex-wife. Apparently he physically assaulted her, and again he paid restitution, and he didn't really have to.
Now, to be fair, she was resisting arrest while he was pretending to be a fake cop. Okay, so now let's go back to this particular crime. And if you're gonna pretend to be a cop with other cops in the area, can you come up with better stuff than, oh yeah, I'm a reserve cop?
I have my stuff in the car. I have my police stuff in the car.
That's a quote. That's a quote. I have my police stuff in the car.
Yes.
Dude, get some lingo, man. Be like, oh, listen, I know the SOP around here. Let me go get my whatever it is, standard operating procedure.
Oh, I see.
Cop lingo, you know, to throw a little of that in. You know what I'm saying?
So slick, Huger.
Oh, believe me, I've impersonated cops so many times.
So let me give you a quote from one of the investigators. He said he kept putting his hands in his pocket, and that has a tendency to make officers nervous. They don't know what your intentions are. So they're like nervous about this guy. They're like, here we have this dude claiming that he's a reserve officer from Lakeside. He doesn't look familiar. The badge that he flashed was questionable. So So, you know, he actually got away easily, right? Because in any other instance, especially if you're a person of color, you're going to probably deal with harsher consequences than cops letting you go and then investigating later.
And they did. One of the guys actually, one of the officers on the scene was familiar with Lakeside PD, didn't recognize the badge, goes back, realizes, no, it's definitely not a Lakeside PD badge, and then go arrest him at 11 in the morning. Okay. So my guess is, by the way, that he'll be perfectly fine. He'll probably pay restitution like he did before. I mean, he's rich. He's not going to jail. He's above the law.
His son stole liquor from a Walmart, got behind the wheel while he was drunk with a bunch of other teenagers in his car, and then killed 4 people in a car accident, right? And he only got 10 years of probation, absolutely no time in a juvenile detention center. All they had to do was claim affluenza. Yeah, this guy is not going to face any real consequences for what happened.